Good day, ma'am. I am Jeneriel Cagas, a Bshm 2B. For this presentation, I will be present at Chapter 11, Organization for Purchasing, Storekeeping, and Transportation.
Chapter 11, Organization for Purchasing, Storekeeping, and Transportation. The place of purchasing. The function of purchasing, as called as selling, for the two acts are complementary and one cannot take place without the other. Purchasing has inevitably developed as a part of a large-scale business and a department of the specialized functional organization. It has attained ever-increasing importance with the recognition of the fact that mass production operation depends on a steady and reliable flow of materials and supplies, and the cost of these purchase components constitute a major factor of product cost. The principles and techniques of sound purchasing are unusually adaptable and profitable in the operation of business, public utility and service companies, government units, schools and colleges, hospitals and other institutions, for which goods are bought and used.
The knowledge of these principles and techniques is essential, not only for the persons specifically charged with a purchasing responsibility, but equally so for the administrative officers responsible for company policies and organization, and also for the marketing executives who must correlate their sales efforts with current buying practice.
Purchasing is generally the term in industry and management used to denote the act and functional responsibility for purchasing the materials and supplies for use. The term purchasing describes the process of buying, learning of the need, selecting supplier, negotiating price and other pertinent terms, and following up to ensure delivery. When this is expanded to include production control, traffic, and shipping, the term materials management is often used. Importance of purchasing. In industrial management, there has been during the last decade a steady increasing pressure to reduce production cost. Competition between industries is one of the strongest factors for such urge. Analysis of the data collected and published by the United States Census Bureau reveals interesting facts. As to the distribution of the use of the American manufacturers' dollars in industry as a whole, 17 cents of the manufacturer's dollar are spent for wages, 26 cents for overhead, and the rest taxes and profit, while the remaining 57 cents are spent for materials. Obviously, therefore, purchasing is a space of management which requires true study and efficient performance. These statistics could very well apply in the Philippines, where wages, taxes, and overhead are comparatively lower and where raw materials have often to be imported from abroad. The purchasing responsibility is sometimes defined as buying materials of the right quality, in the right quantity, at the right time, the right price from the right source. The fundamental objectives of purchasing for a manufacturing industry may be summarized as follows. 1. To maintain continuity of supply to support the manufacturing schedule. 2. To do so with the minimum investment in materials inventory consistent with safety and economic advantage. 3. To avoid duplication, waste, obsolescence with respect to materials. 4. To maintain standards of quality in materials based on suitability for use. 5. To procure materials at the lowest cost consistent with the quality and service required. 6. To maintain the company's competitive position in the industry and to conserve its profit position, insofar as material costs are concerned.
Buying merchandise and materials merchandise is both primarily for resale. Hence, the main features that the buyer must look for are availability, style, in case of style, merchandise, and price. In the case of materials, on the other hand, compliance with definite standard specifications is the prime essential. This is true in the purchase of basic materials for a main product, inasmuch as these are usually brought for manufacturing quality. If a uniform quality product is desired out of the processing, If, however, substitutes are not to be used, their composition and suitability should be ascertained by examination and testing. The buyer of materials, on the other hand, has to locate dependable sources of the specified materials at a reasonable price and has to be sure of delivery. If the material is not delivered on time, operations are affected. And if a high price is paid, the company has to raise the price of the finished product.
Buying equipment. Equipment is purchased because of the time and labor it will save in turning out accurate and quantity work. But before any kind of equipment is purchased, the requirements of the work to be done must be determined and the equipment examined as to its suitability for the purpose. We can take as an example, a simple operation whereby not so many factors are dealt with so that it's not advisable to purchase complicated machines. Another consideration is the durability of the equipment. Equipment is expected to last for some time, then that its purchase should be attended with serious care. Buying supplies. Supplies include those items which do enter into the manufacture of the products but are used within the company and are not resold. They are, for example, the stationaries, greases, lubricating oils, soap, toilet paper, and similar items. Organization of the purchasing department. There are legitimate variations denoting some particular relationships in the purchasing organization. From the standpoint of the organization as a whole, the purchasing department is a rule of facilitating staff department. It makes purchases only on request of the other departments and has no authority to purchase on its initiative. In Figure 7, the purchasing department is headed by the purchasing agent, and assisting him are the assistant purchasing end, the procurement officer, the license and marine insurance officer, the canvassing, shipping, and correspondence personnel. As could be noted in the chart, the procurement division and the license and marine insurance division are related under one department. The purchasing agent is assisted by a group of men known as buyers. There are the men who do the actual buying. They review the requisitions, interview salesmen, determine price, arrange for delivery, and sign the purchase orders. Each buyer is commonly assigned a particular commodity or group of commodities, and these are 1. Attending to the ended orders and local purchases. 2. The procurement division is charged with the functions of preparation of invitation to bid, and 3. Assigning purchases, requisitions, and purchase order to canvassers. It could be noted in the chart that there are 4 canvassing sections, each one assigned to purchase a certain group of materials. The License and Marine Insurance Division undertakes the following functions to wit: 1. Foreign exchange, import and export. 2. Preparation of letters of credit and other banks notes. And 3. Marine insurance coverage under this division is the shipping section, which handles the preparation of trust receipts and shipside bonds, the following up of shipping documents, and the taking charge of incoming and outgoing shipments. Being a facilitating staff function, the size and structure of the purchasing department depends on a variety of factors. The nature of the business determines to a great extent the role of the purchasing department. In a manufacturing establishment, the purchasing unit may be a mere division of the manufacturing department. In a marketing organization, there may be a specific purchasing unit for goods being sold and another purchasing unit for all the other needs of the company. In a business handling both manufacturing and selling, the purchasing department would naturally be a different complexion.
Generally, the bigger the company, the bigger and more specialized would be its purchasing unit.
The cost of materials as compared to the cost of the finished product is another factor, where raw materials are of utmost importance. As in meat packing industries, the purchasing function becomes one of top importance, usually handled by a senior vice president of the firm. The organizational philosophy of top management and the fixation of operations come into play when a decision on centralization or decentralization of the purchasing functions has to be made. Functions of purchasing. The purchasing department is expected to perform the following or some of the following tasks, and these are: number 1, to secure necessary raw materials, equipment, facilities, supplies, and other items according to the specifications earlier arrived at the time fixed by a schedule or when they are needed. 2. To buy at prices according to the standard demanded within current market prices but taking advantages of discounts that may be availed of. And 3. To ask for quotations or bids on a major items and to purchase items not requiring bids, to canvass for prices when the needs arises. 4. To cultivate sources of supply. 5. To participate in the formulation of specifications for purchases and in conferences where purchasing is related. 6. To be on the lookout for new products or desirable substitutes. 7. To interview salesmen even when what they sell is not needed at the time and help them see companies executive. 8. To study markets and the best time to buy. 8. To count and inspect purchases. And 10. To approve invoices for payment. 11. To keep informed on government regulations, other executives about them and inform. 12. Keep records on supplies, material, and other purchases. 13. To study the company needs and requirements. 14. To attend to the routing of purchases. And 15. To look after the disposal of surplus or obsolete material, equipment, supplies, and merchandise. Procedure in purchasing. Purchasing is not as simple a task as it may appear to the average person whose only experience is in purchasing. Personal needs a definite, well-planned, and wisely followed procedure is necessary. The different steps in purchasing followed by the purchasing department illustrated in Figure 8 are as follows. First, the purchase requisition is prepared and signed by the department head needing the material. Specifications, quantity, known sources of supply, and the time when needed are stipulated in the requisition. Second, the requisition is coursed through the accounting department for indication of funds available, after which it is signed by the treasurer or the head of the company, or the manager or whoever is authorized to act in their stead. Third, the purchase requisition is then forwarded to the purchasing department. The procurement officer assigns it to the canvasser concerned, who in turn makes a canvassing as to source, availability, and price. When a big amount is involved, bidding is resorted to after a final decision is arrived at whether through direct buying or bidding. The purchase order is prepared by the purchasing department. Fourth, the purchase order or PO is signed by the purchasing agent, the requisitioner, the treasurer, and the general manager. Copies are prepared for the supplier, the department or unit which needs the supplies, the receiving unit, the account in unit, and the inspection unit. Fifth, the purchase order is then forwarded to the supplier or to the winning bidder in case of bidding. In case the order is not met on time or if there is a materials shortage situation, follow-up may be made either personally, by telephone, or other means. 6. Upon delivery of the purchased goods, they are checked by the requisitioner and the representative of the inspector of auditor to find out whether requirements as to specifications are complied with. If so, the delivery invoice is signed by the requisitioner and the auditor's representative, and the goods are finally accepted. Arrangements for payment are made and records of the transaction for future guide are kept. Relation of purchasing with other organizational units. Analysis of the scope and the type of work of a well-rounded purchasing program indicates that the buying operation virtually touches practically every other department of the whole organization in many vital fields beyond the actual procurement of materials and supplies for their needs.
Thus, it becomes necessary that close cooperation must be maintained not only with production, but likewise with finance, accounting, engineering, maintenance, sales, office management, and the general management as well.
Purchasing and production. Historically, purchasing is allied to the production function, which embraces a wide variety of activities that are subject to specialized and independent administration in more highly functionalized organizations of large industry. The relation is in the form of a well-defined cooperation which involves, first of all, a complete interchange of information.
For example, the production department should advise promptly or in advance the purchasing department concerning the program to be carried on, completed work schedules, and special contract jobs to be undertaken, so that necessary materials and supplies may be arranged in a systematic manner, with practicable leeway for a well-planned program of procurement and a minimum of rush requirements.
Purchasing and engineering. In many ways, cooperation between the purchasing and engineering department is comparable to that between the purchasing and production departments, except that engineering is chiefly concerned with matters of product design and specifications preliminary to actual production requirements in their approach to the materials problems. In the sense that, traditionally, the purchasing agent and the engineer differ, the latter tends to specify wide margins of quality, safety, and performance, whereas the buyer tends to narrow down margins to minimum requirements. The gap created by the divergent viewpoints has been bridged in recent years by the increasing number of moms with engineering training and experience joining the purchasing staff and who annually occupy the position of advisor to the purchasing agent. Purchasing and accounting. Every purchase made represents an expenditure against the company budget and sets in motion a series of accounting operations such as charging the expense to the proper account, the verification and approval of the invoices, final auditing, and payment.
The relationship between the purchasing and accounting departments is considered a vital one which frequently starts before the purchase is actually made. For instance, the purchase requisition before it is finally approved must have to pass through the accounting department for indication of whatever funds are available therefor.
Purchasing and sales. The sales department should keep the purchasing department informed of the mills quota, codes and expectations as guides to probable quantity requirements of materials. When special contracts or new products are contemplated, the purchasing department should likewise be advised in order that the necessary preliminaries of the purchasing program may be undertaken intelligently and in advance of the actual needs. Stores and control function. The function of storekeeping is concerned with providing a place or places for the safe and convenient storing of materials and supplies that are needed for immediate use. For disbursing such materials is required, and foreseeing to it that the supplies do not run out before additional quantities are ordered and received. One man is usually assigned to take charge and is responsible for all aspects of storekeeping. Purposes. The purposes of storekeeping and control may be started into two categories to with. First, from the viewpoint of operation. 1. To assure an adequate supply of materials when needed, in balance with the requirements and turning over at a reasonable rate. 2. To assure that they are readily accessible and safe from fire, floods, theft, and other hazards. Second, from the financial viewpoint, and these are 1. To minimize inventory investment at any given time that reduces the cost of handling and storage, insurance, and interest, and 2. To avoid loss from the deterioration, obsolescence, and falling prices. Location of storerooms. The location of storerooms is an important consideration. It is logical and obvious that the storerooms should be conveniently near to the departments being served, so that no unnecessary time may be lost in getting the items needed. Likewise, the storerooms should be located in such a way that deliveries from an outside source or sources could be facilitated in order to avoid much handling and transportation. Unnecessary handling of materials adds to the cost but not to the value. Stock keeping. Any system of stock keeping or stores controls is predicated on the orderly storage of materials. Under accounting well in storage, attention and be paid to number 1 is facilities, and 2 supervision, and 3 is cones. Storage facilities. Storage facilities must be adapted to the types of materials handled, and which include racks, beam shelving, trays, platforms, and floor space, all numbered or otherwise identified as the specific location. The arrangement must follow closely as specification. Such arrangement will facilitate both the physical and possible the order of the commodity claiming of stock when putting them in the stores or finding them as needed, and accounting for the stock by counting or reconciling them with the records. Supervision. Control of stores is further facilitated by unit storage or pelling so as to give a quick visual count of materials on hand. With uniform arrangement of say 20 units in a layer, and with the use of marking, an accurate count of even several thousands is possible at a glance. A usual method of keeping control of stock is by the use of stock cards, wherein entries of each addition to stock and items from stock, and the balance on hand provides a running inventory of each item. All responsibilities for stores should be centered in a storekeeper and staff, who provide for the orderly arrangement and proper physical care for all materials, record the receipt, keep track of quantities, and issue them as required on proper authorization. Records. The basic record of the store's departments in the stock record or the perpetual inventory. The records of inventories must be periodically verified, say monthly, semi-annually, or annually. Stock records are useful because they reduce physical inventories to reasonable and economic but sufficient levels. They are needed in the preparation of periodic financial statements such as profit and loss or income statements. They reveal slow-moving stocks and the order of preferred priorities in getting stocks. They form a basis for adjustments in the event of fire, theft, or calamity. They minimize the commission of acts, dishonesty, and carelessness. And 6, they enable the enterprise to keep the verdicts as promised to customers. Transportation. Importance of transportation. The importance of transportation as a facilitating function of business cannot be emphasized enough. Its effect on the entire economy is pervasive.
Thus, a State of the Nation address of the President of the Philippines stresses that the cannot be neglected for long without the economy suffering adverse consequences.
The system of distribution may cease to function properly. Prices in local markets may fluctuate. Inventory requirements may become abnormal. Production incentives may flag and resources may remain idle for lack of access.
All functions of business, but most especially production, and some are dependent on a properly managed transportation system.
Modes of transportation. A business firm may depend on outside resources of transportation. In addition, it may operate its own internal transportation facilities. In both instances, the department charged with this function must be staffed by specialists and must make maximum use of planning, scheduling, simplification, and cost controls. Outside transportation may be by truck and bat, by rail, by water, and by air. Trucks and buses are extensively used by business firms in the Philippines. Passenger traffic is also quite heavy. Around this mode of transportation has grown a complex involving not only those who work directly in this transportation business but also those engaged in assembling or repairing motor vehicles, the sales and servicing of vehicles, the refining and marketing of motor fuels and lubricants, and the maintenance of or construction of highways, roads, and bridges. The railroad is an expensive method of transporting raw materials and heavy equipment over relatively long distances. There are two railway systems in the Philippines, one in Panay Island and the other extending from La Union in northern Luzon to Albay in the Bicol Peninsula. There are also special railways for sugar plantations and other enterprises.
Water transportation is even more inexpensive because the Philippines is a heavily dependent archipelago of many islands. Trade and industry transportation require terminal handling to and from the rail on inter-island shipping, both mail and water, way station or port to the firm's premises.
Air transportation is speedy and efficient but expensive. Business is fast realizing the advantages of air cargo for certain types of merchandise. For instance, fishing magnates regularly fly plane loads of fresh fish from Mindanao to Manila. Newspapers must be delivered by air transport. Internal transportation fleets are maintained by manufacturing or marketing organizations. Usually, the supervision and control of the transportation unit are handled by either production or sale, depending upon which function is being serviced.